So Canada Soccer has released its 25-man roster for the Nations League matchups coming up against Curacao and Honduras. Let's talk about it. So guys, welcome to the channel. We're the Africans. We do primarily Canadian African content. Been experimenting with shorts recently, so if it's working, it hits. If it's not, it's not. Anyways, leave a like, leave us your comments on the roster down below. If you like, again, like, subscribe, you know the whole deal. So Canada Soccer's released its roster, 25-man roster, and some interesting names. Let's kind of go over it and what we can glean from it real quick. So, goalies. We have Milan Borjan, no surprise there. Dane St. Clair, no surprise there. Tom McGill from Brighton Hove Albion. Good to see him here. He's an interesting name. We'll bring up questions afterwards. Defenders, we got Sam Adekugbe, Derek Cornelius, Alistair Johnson, Scott Kennedy, Richie Larea, Kamal Miller, Steven Vittoria, and Dominic Zator. Good to see Zator back with the national program. Another CPL alum moving through. Midfield, Stephen Eustachio, Atiba Hutchinson, Mark Anthony K, Ishmael Kone, Victor Laturi, Jonathan Osorio. Okay, and then the forwards, you got Ayo Akinola, Charles Andreas Brim, Tejon Buchanan, Alfonso Davies, Jonathan David, and Kyle Laren. There's a lot of names that we were excited to see potentially. Players started off, whether it's a Kyle Hebert at St. Louis at C, whether it's a Jacob Schaffelberg who started the season well at Nashville at C, whether it's, seeing a player like Ike Ugbo get into the work again, get some work and get play. We were excited to see some players. We didn't see as much here, and maybe this is a bit of just players looking to, not even players, maybe this is a bit more of Canada and mainly Herdman going back to players that he's more familiar with and trying to recruit. But I think in every position group, again, I will get on my soapbox and say, why do forwards have to be just forwards? Can you just put wingers and strikers? Is that hard? Because it's such a bleh. If you're going to put that as forwards, it leaves it open as to what you can play and what you can't play. But I think let's go position by position. Tom McGill opens up an interesting conversation as to who your goalie number 3 is. Realistically, it's more so who's your goalie number 4. But yeah, Tom McGill here. Over the weekend, you had Owen Goodman, who isn't out of the picture yet, but he's got England knocking on his door. He's been to some Nigeria camps. Now, there has been talk of players, potentially saying they're going to switch. It's just a matter of if. It's a matter of not. Bleh. It's more of a matter of when, not if. So that's fine. But Tom McGill entering this when you already have so many interesting Canadian keepers, it does make the keeper position very interesting. Now maybe McGill gets first shot here. Now McGill's 22, and now he's definitely a name we'll start to watch a little bit more as the season goes through. But he is definitely an interesting name that we want to keep an eye on, because with him you have Goodman, you have Pantemis, you have Sirois, you have Hassal. There are goalies that I haven't even named yet that are there. There's Ben Alexander. There's a lot of goalies that you're looking at. You can say, okay, this will be an interesting battle for goalkeeper number 3 and 4. So I think at the goalkeepers, that's the interesting thing that stands out to me. When we get to the defenders, you weren't going to have Raheem Edwards because I think he was suspended still. And I think Alistair Johnson may be suspended as well. But I'm a little bit curious as to when are we actually going to see that actual play in terms of getting players in, and maybe their strategy is go to try to get these top 4 spots, and then afterwards you rotate heavily for the Gold Cup this summer. But from the defenders, Kyle Hebert, definitely a name that we could look at where we say, I'm wondering what we could do with them. Joel Waterman would also be an interesting name to keep an eye on. and a Lucas McNaughton when he starts to play. Those three have been around the program before, but I think we're a little bit surprised that Hebert didn't make this roster. Now maybe he's someone who's penciled in for a Gold Cup run, and which is fine, but you'd like to see a little bit more. And the problem that you could run into is, we'll get to all these players, is what happens if you try to get more in, right? It'd be easier if you could start to integrate them piece by piece, and maybe that's what they're doing with a Tom McGill here, bringing a Victor Loturi here, Charles Andreas Brim, and Ayo Akinola potentially, and we'll get to the forwards there. But it is interesting to see what can and can't be done, and how, especially when they approach this. That to me is the question I'm wondering. How are they going to approach the summer? Assuming they're able to qualify. And again, they have to win these 2 games. And Curacao's talking like they want to win, and we haven't beat Honduras. Like I've said always, we are in the 3rd spot right now in Concacaf, and we have to get comfortable now. Herdman said in his in his press conference statements, Herdman said that, they're the hunted now. They're no longer hunting, which means now they have to be able to prove that they deserve this number 3 spot in Concacaf chair. And maybe we'll see that come through. But the midfield was always interesting. I'm wondering what we see when it comes into the actual summer. Does a player like, say, Jaden Nelson start to get more run? Does a player like Jacob Schaffelberg able to come in and play, whether that's more as a winger or more up top? We didn't see in the midfield more players. I think Liam Fraser is a name that's going to be interesting to watch. I know he's struggling to find minutes. Belgium 2nd Division on a team that's fighting for relegation. And I think this year is going to be interesting to see how quickly and how willing Herdman is to move off of the familiar and explore some of the unknown. I'm very curious to see how quickly, and even if he's willing to do so, because I think there's some great opportunities to do so, right? I think in the midfield we could see some players. Again, form matters, and I think having players who are in good form will matter here, but I think midfield-wise, whether it's a Raposo, whether it's a Sean Rea, right, are we willing to take a look at players, or are we just going to go back to what we're familiar with? And I think that's going to be the interesting look and call for what we do in the midfield. When we get to the attackers, I remember previously someone told me, Jemison's coming in. And to me, when it comes to speculating on players, I'm not going to be one to count on it until I see it. So until the player's there, they're not there. Do they fit what my timeline would be? Sure. Does Jemison have to be here? No. I am a little surprised that, though, they brought in Ayo Akinola. Now, Akinola and Brim, maybe we're looking at this from the standpoint of, why are they here? Maybe this is their last push in. Because Ugbo wasn't getting a run to begin with. So the fact that he just scored is one thing. Now, no Cavallini means you don't have no players. And that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. You don't have a Hoylett here. You don't have a Cavallini here because of injury. You don't have a Maxime Crépeau here. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays through. But you're missing players. But Akinola and Brim were interesting. I mean, the joke with the Can M&T is that only when Brim starts to score braces, window's coming. He hasn't scored a brace yet. Now, maybe he does that this weekend and all is well with the world. But where does a player like Charles Andreas Brim fit? And this comes back to how are we playing, right? You see the amount of defenders. This feels like a 5-3-2, maybe morphing more into a 4-4-2, which can work. Here's where the problem becomes. Where do you put those players? Brim is probably better off as a winger, so maybe he works into that left midfielder role or that right midfielder role. But if you do that on the starting 11, you have players that are there. So Charles Andreas Brim, Ayo Akinola, I think those are the two surprising names that are there, but it's not too much of a surprise when you factor in who is available. Has anyone been playing better? Do you maybe swap in a Jacob Schaffelberg there? Perhaps you could do so. But who else could you call in terms of getting minutes? Not much. At least I don't think right now. Doesn't mean I like this roster. Doesn't mean that I hate this roster. I just think it leans more into going with the familiar versus opening door number 2 with the unknown. Again, this lineup does scream a little bit more of a 4-4-2 to me, with Adekubi, with Richie Larea, and it has players who just aren't looking the best right now. Am I excited to see them? Of course. It's a national team. I want to see how they're able to perform, but I think that's the ultimate question that I have for them. How are they going to look when it feels like half of them are looking great and then the other half aren't? Borion's looked good, St. Clair's looked good. Haven't followed as much as McGill, so I have to start to follow him a little bit more. Adekubi just got back on the pitch in Turkey. And let's not forget what's happening there. Laren and David are scoring. Tejan's looked alright. Alfonso's looked alright. So those as your attacking 4, if you're going to go with a 4-4-2, and then throwing in the midfield, I think intriguingly, I'm wondering if Laturi gets the Ismail Kone treatment, where he just gets thrown into it. I think that would be an interesting pairing. I think if you're going to go 4-4-2, more than likely you have Alistair Johnson on the right, your 2 center backs with Kamal Miller and Steven Vittoria, and then probably Richie Larea on the left. Midfield is Stakio and Kone, flanked by Tejan and Alfonso Davies. And then your 2 up top are Laren and David, with David dropping a little bit lower, and Laren more in that 9s role, and then David more in that roaming forward role. That would be what I would do probably, based off what's here. And then you could always go back to either Cornelius, Kennedy. Yeah, but I'm curious to see what you guys think about this. Again, you've listened to me ramble a little bit more. I don't love this roster, nor do I hate it. It's a roster. It just feels more like we've gone more on the familiar versus exploring, which makes me wonder what the Gold Cup roster will look like if they're able to get this job done. I'd rather have some more familiar faces, and maybe the 5 faces here are the faces that are going to be headlining that Gold Cup roster, whether that's Brim, Akinola, Laturi, Zator, and McGill. We'll see. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about this roster, but I'm going to stop rambling now, and y'all let me know. Bye for now.